Title: I work in a lighthouse that shouldn't exist. The light watches back. The transfer. Introduction: They say the lighthouse was built before the town even had a name. That stone base appeared overnight, long before the sea had any ships to warn or sailors to save. The locals don't speak of it, at least not directly. When I told people I was being transferred there, they looked at me like I had just signed my own death warrant. One old man in a rusted bait shop just said, "That light doesn't guide ships, it watches." He didn't explain what he meant, and I didn't ask. I wish I had. My name is Mason Aldridge, 32, former Navy, now a keeper for the Coastal Beacon Authority. I've done everything from sweeping flooded docks to running the old station at Cold Point during hurricane season. I thought I'd seen it all. Storms that felt alive, boats that returned without their crews, even a drowned church bell that rang at midnight. But none of that prepared me for Station W-13. No one calls it that, though. The file said Cape Wrath Beacon. But the lighthouse doesn't sit on any cape. It's perched on a barren islet 2 miles off the coast of a dead fishing town called Merrow Bay. You won't find it on any tourist map. Just jagged cliffs, waves that crash like artillery, and fog, so thick it feels like it breathes. The transfer papers were abrupt. I wasn't given much of a choice. Short-staffed, they said, just for a few weeks, they insisted. So I packed my duffel and took the ferry, if you can call it that. The boat was barely seaworthy, captained by a man who looked like he'd been carved from driftwood and soaked in rum. He didn't speak the whole way. When I tried to ask questions, he just stared at the water. When the tower finally loomed from the mist, he wouldn't even pull up to the dock, just threw my gear in a crate and told me to use the pulley system. The base of the lighthouse is surrounded by jagged black rocks and rusted scaffolding. The only access is by rope bridge or the service lift. I opted for the lift. The wind screamed the entire way up. Inside, it was colder than I expected. Everything smelled of salt and copper. The walls were damp, lined with barnacles like the place had been underwater once, and maybe still remembered it. My quarters were on the 3rd level, modest and functional. The generator room was 2 floors down, and the light chamber at the very top. My first night was uneventful, until I tried to sleep. That's when I noticed it. The sound, not the waves or the wind, but a faint ticking, like an old clock or a metronome, just outside the door. It stopped the moment I opened it. Nothing there. I told myself it was just the radiator. But then, the light turned on by itself. I hadn't even touched the controls yet. The beam shot out across the Black Sea, cutting through the fog like a scalpel. And for a moment, it shifted, not rotated, shifted, as if it was looking. I climbed to the light chamber to check the mechanism. Everything was in place, but the glass was warm, too warm for a lamp that had been off all day. I felt a strange pressure in my head, like being watched through a keyhole. On the second night, the journal appeared. A thick leather-bound logbook sat on the desk in the main room. It hadn't been there before. I'm sure of it. The cover was cracked and old, and inside were pages filled with cramped handwriting. Some entries were mundane, weather reports, maintenance logs, but others were different. The light spoke again, said it was hungry, saw a shape in the water. Not a whale, not a shark. It waved. It knows my name now. It says it backwards when I sleep. The last entry was dated 5 years ago. After that, blank pages. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear it, the ticking again, faster now, like a heartbeat. I tried playing the radio to drown out, but all I got was static. Until it wasn't. A voice cut through the hiss. Soft, strained, like it was being dragged across a bed of nails. Don't let inside. Then silence. The next morning, I explored the lower levels. There's a storage room beneath the generator that wasn't on the floor plan. The door was locked, rusted shut. But from inside, I could hear something moving, not scuttling or scratching, breathing, heavy and slow, like whatever was inside was dreaming or pretending. Conclusion. By the end of my 3rd day, I was questioning everything. The isolation, the eerie sounds, the way the light would flicker when I walked past. As if blinking, I considered calling in a report asking for reassignment. But something stopped me. Not fear, not stubbornness. Curiosity. That's the worst part. The feeling that I need to know. Why does this lighthouse exist where it shouldn't? Who wrote those journal entries? What is the light really watching? And what happens if it ever blinks? Something is waking in this tower, and I'm not sure I'll be able to leave before it opens its eyes. Would you like me to continue with part 2 now? The light remembers. The light was on again this morning. Even though I never touched the controls last night, it wasn't rotating like it's supposed to. It was fixed, shining dead center at the sea, like it had chosen a specific place. I tried turning it off, but the switch didn't respond. I even shut down the generator. Still, the light stayed on. When I opened the control panel behind the lamp housing, all the wires were fused together, melted like wax. I should have been angry, frustrated, but I wasn't. All I felt was a growing sense of dread, as if the light didn't need electricity anymore. I went back to the journal. The last page was still blank last night, but today, there were new words scrawled at the bottom. It's watching the old wreck. That's where it saw itself first. No one could have written that. I keep the journal locked in a drawer now. I don't remember unlocking it. I don't remember writing anything. But there it was, in handwriting that didn't match the others. I climbed to the observation platform with my binoculars. The sea was quiet, the sky slate gray. But far out, past the reef line, I saw it, a jagged silhouette under the water. The rusted remains of some massive iron hull. I'd never noticed it before. The tides don't shift much here. That ship must have been there a long time. Sunken but not forgotten. I swear the beam of the lighthouse narrowed the moment I found it. Not brighter, sharper, like a laser fixed on a memory. I turned away from the light, my skin itching. My eyes stung as though the beam had touched something deep behind them. That night, I dreamed of drowning, but not in water. I was submerged in light, a thick, choking glow that pressed in on me from all sides, forcing its way into my ears, my mouth, my mind. I tried to scream, but only light poured out, and at the bottom of that blinding ocean stood a man. Only he wasn't right. His face was covered in burns, circular, like he'd been seared by magnifying glass beams. His eyes glowed faintly, mirroring the lighthouse lens. He didn't speak, just pointed back up toward the tower. When I turned, I saw the light again, its beams slowly panning across a field of skeletons. I woke up gasping, hands clenching my bed sheets, drenched in sweat. The ticking was back, faster now. The radio crackled from the corner of the room. I hadn't turned it on. There was no voice this time, just a steady tone, like the long beep of a heart monitor. Then a low whisper, barely audible. Go down. I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed to stay put, but I did it anyway. I descended the spiral staircase past the generator room, down to the locked storage door. The breathing on the other side had stopped. Now it was humming, a slow, rhythmic hum that matched the ticking perfectly. I gripped the rusted handle. It came loose in my hand. The door creaked open on its own. Inside it was pitch black. The air smelled like seawater and burned hair. I stepped forward cautiously. The floor was damp. Stone, not wood, much older than the rest of the structure. The walls were made of thick black rock that didn't match any of the building's construction. I followed the humming into a narrow passage that curved downward like a forgotten well. I don't know how long I walked. Minutes, maybe hours. Time would make sense down there. Eventually, I came to a chamber, round like the top of the lighthouse but inverted, underground instead of above. At its center was a pedestal. On it sat a piece of glass, glowing faintly, not like a light bulb, more like an eye adjusting in the dark. As I approached, the glow pulsed. I reached out and touched it, and in that moment I saw everything. The shipwreck, the original lighthouse keeper, the experiments. They weren't warning ships. They were luring them, testing how much the light could do. Not just physical illumination, but psychological penetration. The light learned from those it touched. Each mind, each soul it absorbed, taught it something new. It remembered emotions. Pain, regret, desire. It remembered names. I staggered back, trembling. The chamber shuddered around me, and the humming turned into whispering. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all saying the same thing. We see you now. I ran, back up the tunnel, through the dark, gasping as I reached the base of the tower. I slammed the door shut behind me and bolted it. The humming stopped. But when I looked out the window, the light was gone. The beam had vanished. Not off, just missing. The lens was still intact. The structure still powered. But there was no glow, no movement, only glass. I climbed the tower, heart pounding, legs numb. The top chamber was silent. The lamp sat cold and still. But the moment I entered, I felt it. Something was in there with me. Not a person, not an animal, just presence. I turned slowly. The beam came back on, and for the first time, it turned toward me. Not slowly, not with mechanical gears, but like a conscious thing, swinging violently until the full force it was on my chest. It didn't burn me, but it rooted me in place. I couldn't move, and in the glow of the lens, reflected like a funhouse mirror, I saw dozens of figures standing behind me. Some missing eyes, some missing skin, all staring directly at me. I blinked. Gone. The light clicked off again. My legs gave out. I collapsed on the metal floor, heaving for breath, choking on the panic. The radio came back online. It remembers you now, Mason. My name. It knew my name. The next morning, I tried the emergency radio to call for extraction. Static. Then I tried the flare gun. Fired it twice from platform. No one came. There's no ferry. No Coast Guard. The boat hasn't returned since it dropped me off. I checked the logs again. There's something I didn't see before, buried under the old entries. A single sheet of paper, dated 10 years ago. All it said was, "Once it looks at you, you can never leave." Outside, the waves are crashing harder than ever. The light's back on. And now, it won't stop looking at me. Things the light left behind. The days don't pass the way they should anymore. I sleep, but it never feels like I've rested. I eat, but I don't remember chewing. The sun rises and sets too, quickly, like time is skipping over itself in little stutters. And the light watches constantly. It doesn't rotate now. It stays fixed on the island's only path to the dock, like it's daring me to try to leave. I started hearing footsteps last night, not the normal creaking of old wood. These were deliberate, wet, like someone walking barefoot across the soaked floorboards downstairs. At first, I thought it might be an echo. This place is full of strange acoustics. But then I heard again, this time right outside the room where I sleep, a slow shuffle and a breath, like something waiting just beyond the thin wooden door, listening to the rhythm of my heart. I held my breath and counted to 10. The shuffling stopped, but something scraped the door gently before it left. Fingernails, maybe. When I opened the door an hour later, nothing was there, but the hallway smelled like seawater and something else, like scorched hair. Again, I've stopped writing in the logbook. Not that it matters. Every time I look inside it, the entries are different. My own handwriting appears where I never wrote. Pages from 100 years ago now list shipwrecks I've never heard of. One page simply said, "You're next." And underneath that, written in smaller text, "We all wrote this. We just don't remember." There's a trapdoor under the lighthouse I hadn't noticed before, covered by a metal hatch, rusty and almost fused to the floor. I found it when the beam of the light suddenly shifted downward in the middle of the night. Just a flicker, one hard jerk like a mechanical seizure, pointed directly to the floor beneath the desk. Then it returned to its usual stare at the dock. I pried the hatch open with a crowbar. Inside was a ladder, leading straight down into darkness. I lowered my flashlight and saw a tunnel, narrow and curved, descending into the island's guts. I don't know what possessed me to climb down. Maybe it was the whispering again, or maybe I was just too tired to resist anymore. I went down. The air was thick and metallic. The walls were slick with moisture that tasted like iron. About 20 feet in, I found the first carvings. Deep gouges in the rock, forming shapes I didn't understand. circles inside squares, intersecting triangles, and long rows of what looked like tally marks, thousands of them scratched with frantic energy. Further in, I found the bunk, a mattress, moldy, stained with what looked like old blood. A journal sat on a wooden crate beside it. This one wasn't like the others. It was made of leather, its cover cracked and brittle. When I opened it, the pages fell apart in my hands. One remained intact. It read, "The light is not a machine. It's a memory, and it doesn't forget pain." There were old bones under bunk, small ones. Animal, maybe. Some were human fingers. I'm sure of it. All bleached white, placed in careful patterns, as though they had been arranged as offerings. I climbed back up and sealed the hatch. Now the light won't stop flickering. It flashes rapidly every few seconds, like it's agitated. I can feel it pressing against my skin when I walk by the windows. Sometimes I catch movement in the corner of my eye. A figure hunched, just outside the glass, looking in, but when I turn, no one's there. I checked the mirror in the bathroom today. My reflection didn't follow me when I moved. It just stood there, staring. I slammed the mirror with my fist. It shattered, but my reflection was still there, watching through 1,000 broken fragments. I wrapped my bleeding hand and left the room, refusing to look back. I found another note pinned to the pantry door. "You've been here longer than you think." What does that mean? I arrived 12 days ago. Didn't I? I checked the calendar. The date was wrong. It had skipped ahead by a month. I looked at my phone, dead, even though I charged the day before. The lighthouse's clock had stopped at 3:17 a.m. That's when I heard the first whisper, wasn't it? Outside, the sky turned green for a moment, only for a second. A flash, like the northern lights, but sickly, riding across the sky like veins under a dying man's skin. The light turned with it, like it knew. I was standing on the second floor, landing when I heard the knock on the front door. 3 sharp taps. Too polite. I waited. Another knock. Slower this time. The door creaked open. I could see the knob twisting, even though I hadn't moved. My legs wouldn't work. I just watched. The door opened. No one there. But the floor was wet, dripping, and footsteps led from the entrance to the base of the stairs. I ran to the observation room and locked the door behind me. I stayed up there all night, watching the sea. Something is walking around the lighthouse now. I can hear it moving below me, sometimes on the same floor, sometimes above. I don't know how that's possible. There's nothing above the lens chamber, but I swear I heard something dragging across the ceiling while I tried to sleep, and now the foghorn won't stop. It used to sound once every hour, but now it blasts every 7 minutes, each time louder than the last. A warning or a signal. This morning, I woke up with a word carved into my forearm. Return. Not scratched. Carved, like with a needle. Neat. Precise. No blood. No pain. Just the word. I'm afraid to sleep again. I think the light can enter dreams now. The last time I dozed off, even for a second, I saw the sea boiling. Hands reaching up from beneath the waves. Pale, translucent hands. Some wore old maritime rings. One held a pocket watch, melted at the center. Another gripped a soaked captain's log, covered in barnacles. All of them pointed at me, and the light just stood behind me, growing taller, stretching like a pillar of fire and glass. I woke up screaming. The mirror was back, unbroken. But this time, my reflection smiled at me. The mirror smiles first. The mirror was whole again. I didn't replace it. I didn't even sweep up the glass. But there it stood on the bathroom wall, clean, uncracked, and grinning with a version of my face that wasn't me. It stood still while I leaned forward. It blinked when I didn't. It smiled wider when I backed away. Then it tilted its head and mouthed a word I didn't understand, but the sound echoed in my skull like it had been shouted. Stay. I haven't looked into it since. I've started avoiding all reflective surfaces. The brass fixtures, the window panes, even the surface of my tea if the light hits it wrong. They don't show me anymore. They show something close. Too close. There's a diary hidden behind the kitchen wall, wedged between 2 beams. I found it when the board started creaking in patterns. 3 short, 2 long, like Morse code in the bones of the house. The notebook is thin, water-damaged, but legible. Belonged to someone named Clark R. In 1882, the entries were written over a span of a week. Then they stopped. The last entry reads, "I see it now. The light doesn't warn ships. It summons them. It's not a lighthouse. It's a lure." There was a list on the final page. Names. Dozens. Some crossed out. Some circled. Some repeated 3 or 4 times. My own name was there. I dropped the book. It flipped open on its own, and the page was blank. No names. Just an illustration. A crude drawing of the lighthouse, surrounded by waves. And in the sky, instead of moon, the light with eyes. Too many eyes. There's no wildlife on the island anymore. No gulls. No insects. No wind. Just the ever-present thrum of the foghorn and the metallic groan of the beam above turning. Only now it doesn't seem mechanical. It turns when I move. Tracks me like a predator waiting to pounce. 2 nights ago, I tried to signal for help. Used the old flare gun kept in the emergency case. Fired straight up. The flare went off, but the sky swallowed it. No glow. No sound. It was like the darkness just consumed it whole. And when I turned around, the beam of the light was fixed on me again. Solid. Silent. Judging. I tried to leave the next morning. Packed what little I had. Filled a bag with food, and set off down the cliff path to the dock. The beam followed me all the way, almost humming with disapproval. When I reached the dock, I stopped dead. The boat was gone. Not broken. Not sunk. Gone. The ropes were still tied, frayed ends dangling into the sea like someone had cut the vessel away. I stood there for an hour, maybe more. Then I saw it, far on the horizon. My boat, floating aimlessly, impossibly far, sails limp, turning slowly. There was a figure aboard it, watching me through a spyglass, wearing my face. I haven't been able to speak since then. My voice feels absent. I try, but nothing comes out. Not a whisper, not a sound, just the pulse of the light overhead, beating in time with my heart like it owns it. Today, there are footsteps in the walls, not on the floorboards or above the ceiling. Inside the walls, a slow pacing that follows me from room to room, always about 3 feet away. Sometimes it knocks, soft and rhythmic. Sometimes it breathes. This morning, I heard my own voice call my name from inside the kitchen wall. I refused to answer, but it kept calling. It was me. Every inflection, every tone, asking me to open the hatch again, telling me it's safe now, that I'm ready. I screamed into the wood, clawed at it until my fingernails bent, but the voice only laughed. When I turned to leave, all the cabinets were open. Inside, each one was a single photograph of me sleeping. From above. Some were dated. Others weren't. In one of them, my eyes were half open. There's a storm forming offshore. I can see it from the top level. Green lightning arcing through the sky, illuminating the horizon in jagged flashes. But the sea isn't reacting. It remains calm, unnaturally calm, like it's waiting for something. I tried smashing the light today. Took the axe in the shed and climbed to the lens. But the closer I got, the harder it became to move, like the air was thickening, resisting. My arms trembled, my vision blurred, and when I raised the axe, the lens rotated on its own and looked at me. Reflected in the glass wasn't my face. It was my corpse, bloated, drenched, face twisted in pain, as if I'd drowned 100 times. The axe fell from my hands and clattered down the steps, and the light laughed. Not a sound. A vibration, a pulse through the tower that rattled my bones and made my teeth ache. It was a sound of victory, of patience. The light is waiting for me to surrender. I don't know how long I've been here anymore. I've stopped marking the days. The clocks don't work. The sun rises at odd angles. Sometimes it rises twice. Sometimes not at all. My beard is thicker. My nails have grown, but I haven't aged. I look the same. There's something on the rocks below the tower now, washed up from the sea. A wooden sign, faded, warped, but just readable. Return keeper to source. Is that me? What source? I dreamt of drowning last night, over and over, my lungs filled with water that burned like acid. In the dream, I woke up gasping on the lighthouse floor, but the light was inside me, growing, expanding, splitting my ribs apart. When I looked down, my chest glowed, like I had become the lens. There's a knock at the door again. It's rhythmic. 3, 2, 3, like before. I won't answer, but the air smells like salt again, like something ancient and wrong. And when I pass the mirror now, it follows me. It walks when I do, smiles when I don't. The mirror smiles first. The keeper's echo. I woke up outside the tower. Not in my bed, not on the floor. Outside on the cold, dew-drenched grass behind the lighthouse. I don't remember walking there. I don't remember sleeping. My clothes were soaked like I'd been dragged from the sea, but my skin was bone dry. The door to the lighthouse was wide open. Light was pouring out, too bright for morning, too bright for reality. It bled across the ground in long, slow-moving waves, like liquid glass. It pulsed in rhythm with the tide, but there was no sound, not even the distant groan of the foghorn. Just light, watching, waiting. There were footprints around me, dozens, bare feet, some large, some small, all circling me, some leading to the sea, some back to the tower. I followed one set out of instinct, child-sized prints heading toward the edge of the cliff. At the end of the trail, I saw something glinting in the grass. A button, old, brass. It looked like it belonged to uniform I wear, but I still had all mine. I left it where it was. I went back to the tower. Inside, everything had changed. The furniture was gone. The books, the fixtures. The walls were stripped to bare stone, wet and breathing. Yes, breathing. In and out, damp, pulsing alive. The entire interior throbbed like a heart. The staircase to the top twisted upward endlessly now. I climbed for what felt like hours. The higher I went, the more the light dimmed. Not darker, just thinner, like it was being stretched, strained through some unseen lens. And the walls whispered, not words, memories. He came in 1937. He never left. She fed the light until she was hollow. It knows your fears because it gave them to you. I reached the top eventually, or what should have been the top, but there was no lens, no machinery, no railing or floor, just a black pool. It floated in the center of the chamber, suspended in midair, rippling like oil on glass. I looked down into it and saw every version of myself, crying, screaming, drowning, laughing, burning, begging, watching. All of them pressed against the other side of the surface, eyes wide, mouths open. One of them was mouthing something. I leaned closer, and it spoke inside my head. This isn't the first time you've worked here. I stumbled back. The tower groaned, not from age or weather, but from awareness. It knew I understood now. It wanted me to remember. I started running, down the spiral stairs, past the whispering walls, through the hollow rooms. But every step I took downward, the tower grew taller. Windows disappeared. Doors shifted. The outside world became an echo, distant and unreachable. I found myself back in the kitchen. The mirror was gone, but in its place was a wall, cracked open. The voice behind it had stopped pretending. "Come home," it said, in a voice deeper than any human throat could form. And then a hand reached through, thin, salt-covered, with fingers that ended in mirror shards. It beckoned. I froze. That was when the light blinked. Yes, blinked. The whole tower shuddered, the pulse of the beam cutting out for just a second. And in that second, the world shifted. Suddenly, I was underwater. The kitchen flooded. Chairs floated like ghosts. Dishes drifted in slow motion. And through the window, I saw figures walking across the seafloor. Old keepers, old versions of me, dragging their feet, eyes glowing with the tower's light. The hand was still there, still waiting. I didn't take it. I slammed the wall shut and ran. Up the stairs again. Always the stairs. Always back to the top. This time, the pool was gone. In its place was a door. Steel, sealed tight, but it opened as I approached. Behind it, I saw the original keeper's quarters, preserved perfectly, oil lamp burning low, journal on the desk, coat on the hook. I stepped inside, and the door shut behind me. I tried it, locked. The journal on the table was open, fresh ink. "You've made it," it read. "You lasted longer than most. Now you'll be the light. It's how the tower survives." Then I felt it inside me, burrowing behind my eyes. The light, it was inside me now. And I understood. This place was never built. It was born. It's a creature, a being. It lures the broken, the curious, the lost. It eats time, memory, identity. It makes you forget who you were until the only thing you remember is the duty to keep the light burning, to lure the next, to feed the tower. I sit at the desk now. I write this down, but my hands move on their own. The beam above turns slowly, watching the sea, watching you, waiting. Soon, someone will find this journal. They'll read it, and they won't believe a word, just like I didn't. They'll climb the tower, just like I did, and they'll see the light, just like me. And then the mirror will smile first, the light that remembers. I don't sleep anymore, not because I'm not tired, but because the tower won't let me. It watches through the beam, through the walls, through the cracks in the floorboards where I shouldn't exist. Every time I try to close my eyes, I feel it rummaging through my thoughts like hands through drawers, pulling out memories, unfolding them, rewinding them, then putting them back in the wrong places. Sometimes I forget my own name. Sometimes I remember names that don't belong to me. This morning I answered to James. I don't know a James, but the tower does. Last night, while polishing the base of the lens, the thing that turns endlessly even when there's no power, I saw something reflected in the glass. Not behind me, not beside me, inside me. It was a version of myself I didn't recognize. Beard longer, skin pale and thin, eyes pure white, and it was whispering something my reflection mouth never formed. "He's still in there with you." I blinked and it was gone. When I turned to leave the lantern room, the door wasn't there anymore. Just stone, seamless, solid. I sat down, pressed my ear to the wall, and listened. Footsteps on the other side, pacing, pausing, breathing, measuring. They didn't match my own. They were heavier, deliberate, like someone circling prey they didn't want to startle. I didn't scream. The tower doesn't like screaming. It listens when you scream. And worse, it answers. Instead, I curled up under the lens and waited for the door to return. It did. Hours later, I think. I stepped through into a corridor I hadn't seen before. Not stairs, not floors, just corridor, stone, curving downward like a tunnel bored to the inside of a whale's rib cage. It smelled like salt in old books. The walls were covered in markings, carvings from knives, keys, fingernails, names, sentences, some etched so deep the stone wept dark stains. We warned them. She never left. It wrote in my voice. I walked for what felt like miles. No light, but I could still see. A soft bioluminescence that didn't come from any source. Just an awareness of space. As if the tunnel wasn't dark, just unlit. There's a difference. The deeper I went, the more I heard it, chanting. Low, repetitive, monotone. A language I didn't understand, but that curled around my ears like smoke. And beneath it, a second voice. Wet, guttural, weeping and laughing at the same time. The tunnel opened into a chamber, massive, larger than the base of the tower could possibly hold. The ceiling rippled like the surface of a lake. Floating in the center was a chandelier, except it wasn't made of glass or crystal. It was made of bones, tiny ones, fingers, I think, all twisted together, forming the base of a great, inverted flame. The light pulsing from it was not warm, not welcoming. It felt like regret, like apology. There were people kneeling below it, dozens, all dressed in Lighthouse uniforms from different eras, 1930s, 1890s, even modern ones I didn't recognize. They didn't speak. They just rocked slowly, hands folded, eyes closed, faces blank. I tried to speak to one. His eyes snapped open, and they were filled with light, blinding. I stumbled backward, and he began to whisper in perfect unison with the others. The light remembers. The light forgives. The light becomes you. I turned to run, but the tunnel was gone. In its place, a staircase, wooden, spiraling up into darkness, dripping with something that smelled like rust and dead flowers. I climbed. I didn't have a choice. Each step made my teeth ache, like I was ascending through pressure. The stairs grew narrower until I was crawling. Then the wood beneath me became flesh, slick, pulsing, and then stone again. When I emerged, I was back in my quarters, except nothing was where I left it. The desk was on the ceiling. The bed floated sideways, suspended by thick ropes made of braided hair. The window looked out onto stars, not sea, endless stars, moving too fast, spiraling in and out of shapes. And the moon, there were 3 of them, all bleeding light into the sky like broken yolks. The mirror was back, and it was laughing, not out loud, but in its movements. My reflection smiled when I didn't, tilted its head when I stood still. Then it held up a key, a long, iron key carved with symbols I couldn't read. I reached toward it. So did the reflection. But when our hands met the glass, it stepped through. I didn't move. I couldn't. It took my place. Walked over to the bed. Sat down. Began writing in a journal. My journal. And I stood motionless, trapped in the mirror. I can still see the room. But now from behind the glass, I watch it wear my skin. I watch it wave at the camera at the top of the stairs. There is no one watching the lighthouse anymore, except the light. And now me, the reflection turns its head now and then gives me a little nod, as if to say, you were always going to end up here. The beam turns, the sea rises, and I see someone walking on the rocks. A new keeper. They've come to relieve the post, just like I did, and the tower pulses in anticipation. Hungry, waiting, smiling. The keeper before me. He knocked 3 times on the iron door. Each knock was too loud, as if it echoed through more than just the tower. The sound spread deep, beneath the floorboards, beneath the stone, into the cracks of whatever lies under this place. The air shifted the moment he stepped inside, like the lighthouse took a breath. I saw it all from behind the mirror. The new keeper wore a rain slicker, yellowed and fraying, with the same patch on his arm that I'd worn when I arrived. North Atlantic Beacon Registry. He carried 1 duffel bag, a thermos clipped to the side, and a laminated clearance badge that wouldn't mean anything in this place. He was humming. Why was he humming? That tune, simple, off-key. I recognized it. I'd hummed it once. Or someone else had. I think it was a tune the reflection had been writing in the journal, scribbled between lines like notes in a madman's composition. The keeper's name was Marcus. I know this because the tower told me. Not in words. In flickers. Glimpses. Images I shouldn't have access to. Marcus at a diner, sketching lighthouses on napkins. Marcus screaming in his sleep. Marcus as a boy, dragging a flashlight across his wall, making shadows dance while something behind him moved in sync. He settled in like he'd been here before. Walked past a warped staircase without flinching. Turned on a lantern that hadn't worked in weeks. He even nodded to the lens above, like it was a friend, and the beam responded. It slowed for him, dimmed, then flared. Acknowledgement. I pressed my hands to the mirror, tried to scream. No sound came, just fog on the glass. Marcus stopped mid-step, looked around confused. I thought for a second he'd heard me. Then he turned and looked directly into the mirror, right at me, and winked. Not scared, not shocked. Familiar, as if he expected me to be there. He reached into his coat and pulled out a notebook, the same size and shape as mine. On the cover, scratched in faint silver ink, Cycle 37. He opened it, read a line, nodded, and headed up the tower stairs like he was late to work. I watched him past the windows, level after level, past the broken floor, past the hanging ropes, past the staircase that loops forever. The light pulsed again when he reached the top. It bathed him in its cold, ivory gaze, and for a moment, the whole structure shivered. I think it was happy, or satisfied. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time is slippery here. The lighthouse doesn't run on seconds. It runs on memory. Then the vision started again. Not of Marcus, of the one before me. He was older, beard down to his chest, clothes like a 1940s Navy man, his face sunken hollow, eyes wrapped in cloth. I saw him sitting in the lantern room, whispering to the light, holding something in his lap, a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. It moved. I tried to look closer, but the image shifted violently, like a projector chewing through the film. Then another vision. The same man, standing at the mirror, this mirror, pounding on it with bleeding hands, screaming, but his mouth had been stitched shut. The stitching looked fresh. He saw me, and in one blurred instant, we shared something. A memory? A scream? A warning? It burned into my mind. It learns from each of us. And then he was gone. I turned back to Marcus. He was talking to himself in the lens room, laughing. The kind of laugh that comes from someone who's realized a joke isn't funny anymore, but they're trapped in it anyway. He held up his notebook and read aloud. Day 1 arrived. Light is active. No sign of previous keeper. Day 2, heard footsteps last night. Not mine. Day 3, mirror and quarters won't reflect properly. Day 4, something speaks to the foghorn. He stopped reading. Looked directly at the lens. Day 5, I think I'm not the first Marcus. Then he turned to face the mirror again. And this time, he spoke directly to me. You still in there? I tried to nod. Nothing moved. He smiled. They showed me what you saw, what you became. We don't get out, you know that, right? We just change positions. He stepped forward, placed a hand on the mirror. You were a good lookout. Tower likes that. But it's my turn now. I felt something shift in the glass. My fingertips moved. Just a twitch. Then more. The cold gave way to warmth. Not inviting, melting. Like the glass wanted to become part of me. And that's when I understood. The mirror doesn't trap. It preserves. Each keeper. Locked in. Filed away. A reflection isn't just a mimic. It's a copy. And eventually, the lighthouse doesn't need you anymore, because it can run the station with your reflection alone. That's why Marcus winked. He'd been here before. Maybe not as Marcus, but as someone, or something. And now I was next in the line of images. Faces frozen behind glass, waiting to be recycled, rewritten, reused. I saw the reflection of Marcus begin to blur and change. His smile stretched too wide. His eyes dimmed. His coat shifted colors, then designs, then turned into ribbons of light like magnetic tape unwinding. He looked into the beam. It absorbed him, or he walked into it. I don't know which, but the light burned white hot, then disappeared. The tower went dark for the first time since I arrived. Silence. And then a new knock at the door. 3 slow pounds. Too loud, too deep. I turned to the mirror. This time it showed no one. Just the room behind me, the room I used to call my own, until I realized it never belonged to me. It was always the lights. And now, so was I. Fog that remembers. The fog returned thicker than before. Not just a curtain smothering the ocean, but something alive, heaving, shifting, curling to the lighthouse windows like it knew the halls. It moved with purpose, dragging memory in its wake. You don't realize what fog can do until it whispers your name. I was still behind the mirror. I don't know how many days had passed. It didn't matter. There was no light anymore, no sun, no moon, just that gray soup outside and the stillness inside. The kind of stillness that feels like breath held in a dying lung. I could see the hallway now. The mirror had changed its angle. It wanted me to see. Footsteps echoed. Not boots. Bare feet. Slow. Wet. Slapping against the cold stone like someone recently pulled from a sea. And then the humming came again. The same off-key melody Marcus had hummed. The one I had too, and the one the man before me had scratched into the walls. It wasn't a tune. It was a signal. Something old. Something the tower uses to keep us docile, like a lullaby for prisoners. From the fog came a shape, tall, twisted, too long in the arms. Its skin glistened like kelp and glass. Its head twitched with every note of the tune, like a metronome. When it passed in front of the mirror, I recognized the face. Marcus. But not him. This was something made in his image. A poor attempt, like a child drawing brought to life. The eyes were too large, lips too thin, the expression void. Hollow, a puppet built from memory. It stopped at my door. Its head tilted sideways, listening. Then it whispered, "Who is next?" My breath caught. I don't know if it heard me or if the lighthouse answered. But something stirred upstairs, the light room, where the lens should have been dead. Flared blue, a cold blue, the kind you only see in morgues and sunken ships. The figure turned and walked back into the fog, its humming growing louder as it vanished up the stairs. I was alone again, until the walls started bleeding. Not with blood, with ink, letters, sentences. Whole paragraphs began appearing across the plaster, black and slick, dripping as they formed. The fog is not weather. It is witness. Each step we take becomes another thread in its web. We don't shine the light. It shines us. I backed away from the mirror, but I couldn't turn. It held me. The tower held me. This place, it doesn't keep you in chains. It keeps you in story. You become part of it, like a chapter ready to be read again. Something thumped from above. Then again, heavier, dragging, and then a crack. I knew that sound, the lens housing. Something had broken it loose. A piece of glass slid down the stairwell, shattering one floor above me. Another followed, and then something crawled down. Not walked, crawled. The sound was wet, like sea creatures scraping against old wood. The shadows twisted unnaturally across the wall, like arms stretching too far. The reflection came back, this time clearer. But it wasn't me anymore. It was us, every keeper before, standing shoulder to shoulder in a row stretching into darkness. Dozens, hundreds, their features blurred, overlapping. Some missing eyes, others with mouths sewn, one without a face at all staring forward. And behind them, the light, not the lens, the thing inside it, a being made of beams and pulsing nerves of gold, flickering like candlelight inside a storm. I saw fingers made of rays, weaving in and out of the keeper's skulls like puppeteer strings. Their hands twitched when it moved. The voice returned, not in sound, but in thought. You lit the way, now be the path. Then I felt the pain, real, sharp, like something boring into the back of my neck. My skin tightened. I screamed, but no noise came. My reflection grinned back at me, split-lipped and gleaming, its eyes rotating like lenses. It replaced me, piece by piece. My thoughts slowed. I remembered Marcus's warning. We don't get out. We just change positions. But I wouldn't be next. I'd be part of it. I pressed my hands to the mirror again. This time they passed through. Not like air, like liquid, like oil. My arms slid in, and the cold wrapped around my bones like ice water. But behind the glass wasn't my room anymore. It was the ocean, miles deep, and on the seabed stood the lighthouse. Upside down, its foundation embedded in black sand, its beam glowing downward into nothing. Around it, hundreds of reflections floated, keepers like me, suspended in place, faces twisted in terror and awe. One of them turned to me. Marcus, the real one. He opened his mouth and outpoured the humming tune. The same song, the one the fog repeats, the one the tower writes into your soul. I tried to pull back, but the lighthouse wanted more. It wanted me to see what came next, because someone else was climbing the stairs. A new figure, female this time, young, curious, the way I'd once been. She paused on the bottom floor, looked at the walls bleeding with ink and read. Keep the light alive? She called out, "Hello." No one answered, because the mirror behind her had already begun to ripple, and in it I was smiling. the keeper's reflection. The moment she stepped inside, the temperature dropped. It wasn't just cold air. It was a feeling of being swallowed by something ancient, something waiting. She paused at the entrance, eyes scanning the walls still soaked with ink, words swirling like dark water around her. The fog outside pressed hard against the windows, as if desperate to get in, but the door was already shut tight behind her. No way out. I watched her from inside the mirror's oily depths, my reflection a twisted echo of myself, grinning wider than I ever could. I wanted to warn her, but the lighthouse had claimed my voice, tied it up in silent knots. She stepped forward, cautious but curious, trailing her fingers along the wet words dripping from plaster. The light doesn't just watch. It chooses. Her eyes flicked toward the spiral staircase, that same narrow, rusted ladder leading upwards toward the source of everything. Something tugged her toward it, a silent summons that made her skin prickle with dread and excitement all at once. Upstairs, the air shifted. The thick lens, cracked and broken, pulsed faintly with a light not meant for mortal eyes. The light that watches back. She hesitated at the top step, staring out from a high window at the endless gray sea. The fog lay flat and thick, swallowing the horizon. And then, behind her, the whispering started, soft, like a breath right against her ear. Light the way. She spun around, heart pounding, but saw nothing. Just a broken lens, a flickering glow, and shadows that stretched and twitched as if alive. Her reflection in the glass didn't match her movements. It lingered longer on her face, eyes gleaming with something foreign, something hungry. Suddenly, the humming filled the room again, louder, echoing off stone walls like a funeral dirge. She covered her ears, but the sound burrowed deep into her skull, twisting her thoughts until reality fractured like shattered glass. Outside, the fog began to seep through the cracks, pooling around her feet and creeping closer like fingers seeking flesh. She turned to run, but the staircase dissolved beneath her, replaced by an endless abyss. The walls bled ink once more, swirling around her like a vortex of lost souls, dragging her into the mirror's depths. And then silence. Inside the mirror world, the lighthouse loomed upside down, bathed in eerie blue light. Hundreds of other keepers floated, trapped between time and memory. Some reached out, their faces contorted in silent screams. One of them stepped forward, my reflection, twisted and grinning, whispering the ancient tune that binds us all. Welcome to the light. And I realized with a hollow certainty that she wasn't just a next keeper. She was the beginning of a new story, one that the lighthouse would write forevermore, watching, waiting, and feeding off those who dare to light the way. The light watches back. The fog swallowed her scream before it even left her lips. Inside the mirror's depths, the world folded and twisted, and the lighthouse's pulse grew stronger, a slow, relentless heartbeat echoing through the abyss. She drifted among the trapped keepers, their faces frozen in agony, their eyes wide with unending dread. I reached out, but my hands passed through hers like smoke, our fingers never quite touching. The lighthouse's light wasn't just a beacon for lost ships. It was a predator. It watched, it judged, it consumed. The beam didn't just sweep the sea. It swept souls, pulling them into its eternal glow. Suddenly, the beam fractured, a shard of blinding gold shooting straight at me. I was pulled forward, crashing through memories, drowning in waves of light and shadow. I saw Marcus, his face twisted in pain, chained to the lighthouse's core, his eyes pleading for release. I saw the man before him and the countless others, all trapped in a cycle that never ended. Then the light spoke, not in words, but in a feeling, a cold, invasive presence that seeped into my mind. You are the flame. You are the watcher. You cannot leave. You are the light. I screamed in silence, my body dissolving into rays of pure light, merging with a beam that shone out across the endless fog. Back in the real world, the lighthouse stood empty once more. The fog rolled on, thick and silent, hiding secrets that no one should ever uncover. And somewhere, far beneath the waves, the light watched back,